There are two Behringer mics that look pretty similar, the C2 and the B5. B5 is a bit more expensive, so which one do you think you'd choose? I'm going to do that in a later video, but today we're going to take a look at the Behringer B5. Hi, my name's Ian and today we're going to take a look at the Behringer B5. The B5 is a pencil condenser mic, and you've got to supply it with phantom power between 24 or 48 volts. It can go lower as well. I'd be careful about going too low though with the power, because obviously that might bring in other things like a bit more noise. Now, the one thing about pencil mics is they are really convenient. They're small and you can plant them in shot without them being too obtrusive, which is rather nice, as opposed to the large condensers, which when you have them in shot, they're quite a large thing to be having there. Especially if you put a pop filter on, they're going to be right in your face. And a lot of people don't like that, which is the reason why I very often boom a large condenser rather than put it here in front of me. But the pencil mics are small enough to not be too obtrusive in shot, and that's one great advantage of them. Another advantage with pencil mics is that they generally have a pretty even response from say about 50 up to about 17, 18 kilohertz. They're pretty even. They don't have quite an extended response like the large condensers, but they're smooth sounding very often. Although they are generally smooth sounding, they do very often have a slight peak up the top. Whether they put that there on purpose or whether that's just the way the mic works, I've no idea. But for that reason, they're particularly good at recording instruments like guitar and something with where you want a little bit of edge. But they can also be used quite happily with the voice. They do add a little bit of clarity to the sound of your voice and less of the boom down below. Because the pencil microphones don't go down to 20 Hz quite as loud or strong as a large condenser, there's less call for the use of a high pass filter, which is rather nice, although this one does actually have a high pass filter on it. So at the moment I'm using the B5 not boomed above me but actually below me, pointing up at my mouth. Used this way I can get it just slightly closer, which can help with the sound in the room. In my room, when you get reverberations, it's nice to get the microphone as close as I possibly can in order to alleviate as much of the room noise as I can. For all intents and purposes, the B5 looks almost exactly the same as the C2, and you wouldn't be able to tell the two apart that easily just by looking at them on a photograph, which makes many people think, oh well, the C2 might be better. But the B5 does come with one big advantage, especially for pencil mics. The noise floor of 78 dB is pretty good for a pencil microphone. The C2 I think comes with a noise floor of about 75, and it is actually noticeable if you place silence into your recorder and listen back to both of them. You just detect just a slight bit more with the C2. Not that much, but it is there. It is noticeable, just about. So the B5, just like the C2, comes with a 10 dB pad, so you can record a further 10 dB on the top if you want to, if you've got loud sounds. So if you want to record a nice jet engine or something, you can use your 10 dB pad. And it also has the high pass filter built in, which is very, very useful because these pencil microphones do tend to be very susceptible to air noise outside, and you need a very good wind filter on the top, but that high pass filter switch can then take a lot of that away as well. So it's a very useful thing to have on the pencil mics especially. I think one thing that people don't realise about the B5 is it's actually two microphones in one. It comes with two heads. The head that I'm using at the moment is a cardioid to remove the room sounds and help to cut down on the reverberation in here. So I'm using the cardioid head, but it also comes with an omni head, which is really useful. The thing about these omni heads is that because they receive all the way round, you can pick up sounds, ambient sounds around you at the same time. And actually omni heads are less susceptible to the sound of the wind as well. If you blow over a cardioid, you're going to hear it really easily on these pencil microphones. The Omni is less susceptible to that, so it's useful outdoors. The only thing is, if you're going to record speech, you're going to need it close to you in order to pick you up louder than the surrounding sound. But it's also very useful for picking up ambience and putting on the ambience underneath your speech later on if you want to. Okay, now up until now, you've heard the microphone being used on a boom stand about 2 feet away from my mouth. So obviously when you're going to use it like that in a room, it's going to pick up more of the room sound. So now what I'm using is the microphone handheld and about 8 inches away from my mouth. And that way, hopefully it alleviates a little bit of the room sound. I'm using the cardioid head and it's on a handle, so I'm hopefully not picking up too much of the noise. This is what the mic actually looks like. So when it's in shot, it's not going to be too obtrusive. Got no windbreak on it, so it's I'm speaking over the top of the microphone, not directly into it. So this is the sound of the front of the microphone, around 8 inches. This is the sound of the microphone from the side. This is the sound of the microphone from the rear. Now don't forget, from the rear, especially in a room, it's likely to be picking up reflections from the wall in front of me there. So it's going down there and back here again. So you're possibly picking up more reflections. And now I'm onto the side again. And now we're back onto the front. So that's the sound of the cardioid head, used about 8 inches away from the mouth, when you can then hopefully get rid of most of the reverb in the room. I'm now using the omni head at the same distance of about 8 inches from my mouth. So there's the omni head, and the thing with the omni, although it is called an omni head, obviously from the back of the microphone you're going to have the body of the microphone itself shielding the capsule, so it's going to drop off probably a little bit towards the back. But with an omni it might be perhaps picking up a little bit more room sound, and later I'm going to try it on the boom, and I think you might notice there's a difference. So this is the sound of the omni from the front, this is the omni from the side, this is the omni from the back, and here I suspect it might have just dropped away a little bit because the body of the microphone itself is in the way, coming back to the side, and this is the omni from the front again. So hopefully all around the omni isn't too touchy about where you hold the thing. These things are quite handy for interviews actually, because when you use an omni it's not so touchy and you can kind of move it around like this, as I'm trying to demonstrate now while you're talking, and hopefully there's not too much difference with the sound. This time I'm using the omni head and I've got the high pass filter switched in, so a little bit of the bass has been taken away. This is really useful if you're in those windy situations because it cuts out a bit of the bass sound. So this is the omni head with the high pass filter put in. There's another thing, is because it's an omni head it's less susceptible to wind sound, but also with the bass cut you can take even more out if you want. This time I'm using the cardioid head with the high pass filter. This will help again, as I say, with the wind sounds, and the cardioid head in particular is very prone to picking up the noise of the wind and sounds that hit the capsule itself. One thing about these capsules is they are very small. They're really, really very, very small capsule. So the thing is, when you take these out and about, they're going to be really easy to lose. But more importantly, I think really you need to be very careful with them because you could damage these quite easily. And it surprises me that the companies that give out these multiple heads, they don't give you something decent to carry them in to protect them. And I would suggest getting something airtight preferably, but something padded to just protect the capsule when you're not using it, and also find somewhere where you're not going to lose it because it's tiny. Now we're back in the boomed position, but instead of booming from below where the bass and chest sounds can be amplified, we're now booming from above. Now about this booming thing, I've got a wall behind me, and sometimes I find if I boom below, although it can raise the chest sound, it can also avoid the sound of the wall behind me. This time the microphone is pointing down at me into my chair, so hopefully my chair is not reflecting too much, and this is the sound of the cardioid again boomed from above. Now that's the sound that you would get with it boomed with no bass cut in, and the high pass filter is switched out at the moment. This is the sound of the mic as it would sound from boomed directly about 2 feet away. What I've done now is I've done the same thing. The microphone is boomed in exactly the same position, about 2 feet away from my mouth, but I've put the high pass filter switch in to take out a bit of the bass sounds. Now if you find that your room is a little bit boomy and bassy, that might be useful, but it's certainly useful for cutting wind sounds. So that's the sound of the microphone with the bass actually cut. Now I've changed the capsule over and I'm now using the omni capsule in the room. No bass cut, there's no high pass filter switched in. This is the sound of the Omni in a room, and I would suspect that there's a bit more reverberation sounds being picked up in the room. It might sound a little bit more natural, and less sort of almost mono-like focused, but it's picking up a little bit more of the general sound. So that's the sound of the omnidirectional mic, boomed about 2 feet away from where I'm speaking. Now I've switched the high pass filter in, so a little bit of the bass has been taken out, and hopefully it's gone a little bit lighter sounding, and if there is boominess within the room, that's been cut as well. So this is the omnidirectional with the high pass filter switched in the room. So it might be a very, very different sound to the cardioid. Now the question is whether the B5 is worth the extra money over the C2. In my opinion, it actually is. I think it's a very nice microphone. It's one that I use quite a lot, basically in quiet places, because it is a quieter mic. It's slightly quieter, it's slightly smoother, there's less of that treble edge, and it's got the 2 heads. You've got the choice of cardioid and omnidirectional, so really it's 2 mics in one. They're a great mic, they work really well. So in my opinion, it is worth upgrading to the B5. If you enjoy my videos, please consider subscribing. It's nice to get more than 10 people watching if possible, and if preferably, press the like button too, and maybe that'll bring my videos to the attention of other people who can come in and listen as well. So if you really enjoy them, please consider subscribing to my channel, and thank you very, very much for watching. Cheers for now.